It's a warm June afternoon. I'm 3 years old, and I'm seated on the living room floor, staring at the pink, pulsing mass of an open heart surgery on the television with my aunt and uncle. Suddenly, the front door whooshes open, and in spills an exuberant mass of sunshine that illuminates a rather strange exuberance in my mother's smile. She says to me, "Guess what? Your name is going to be Beth now." Okay. Up to then, I had been Liz. But the cult in which I grew up had caught word of the little incident with my friend Peter. We had been caught out under the maples in the front yard under a painting blanket, exploring. Not to be done in the cult. That was cutting dangerously close to becoming the sexual predator that my grandfather had been. So one of the leaders called my parents into their living room that afternoon and announced that Liz was far too close to the name Liz Taylor. Way too sexy, too sex-obsessed. And that Beth would be far more appropriate. Perhaps because it was the name of the character in Little Women who died, because she was too good for the world. So I tried to be the sweet Beth, I really did. But every time one of those priests called me into their office to ask about my sexual fantasies or whether I was masturbating, not that I even knew what masturbation was until my early 20s, every time I was called into one of those meetings, I was sure that I had a deep, dark hole in the depths of my soul, just like my grandfather. I started waking up early before our first communion services of the day to read the Bible, to pray the rosary, pray novenas, beg God to make me pure. And every night I would pour my confessions of my impure thoughts into the nightly notes that I was instructed to slide under the door of the adult in charge of me. But what happened was that the more I confessed, the more it was like gasoline on the fire and brimstone of their beliefs. The more I confessed, the more they were sure that I was just like my grandfather. To the point that when I was 17 years old, I was pulled out of high school and sent to their convent, where I remained for 4 long years, until they decided that, without telling me, of course, I had a sex demon and I needed to go. So I took my so-called sex demon self out into the world, and I put myself through college and graduate school. I brought my daughter into the world. I started a kick-ass business, and I moved my family down to the mountains of North Carolina. The one thing I didn't do, sex. Told myself didn't need it, didn't want it, couldn't have cared less. And then 5 years ago, I started to really let myself feel the anguish of being in my second sexless marriage. And I knew I had to do something different. So I left that marriage, and I went and I started studying sex. I hired coaches, I started playing with lovers of different genders, I went to play parties, and let me tell you, there was a really good reason why they thought I had a sex demon. They picked up on something that took me 40 years to even begin to fathom. But what they thought was demonic and deviant, they had confused with my sexual divinity. In the last few months, I have fallen into a deep soul love with 3 of my lovers. I have experienced multidimensional orgasms that have connected me with the all. I even went to my first orgy, where my first trans lover made me scream in front of the entire room, "I am a freaking sex goddess." I've woken up a lot of mornings recently going, who am I? Just last week, I was standing in the kitchen of one of my dear friends who happens to be a sex worker. And I was talking to her and one of my lovers, and I said, so what's the deal with queer? What's the definition? Am I? And they just looked at me and laughed. So today, I'm here to reclaim the pink pulsing mass of my own demonized heart and to stand in the exuberant sunshine of the public eye and declare to you, I am a sex goddess. I am queer, and I am proud.